Last episode, Marcus Reed found a journal, a dead billionaire's private journal, tucked inside a $2 box at a garage sale. He read the first page. He read the first file. And for the first time in his life, something shifted. A small crack in the wall he'd built around the idea that everything was fine, that he just needed to work a little harder, save a little more, that next year would finally be different. But then he found the note, the warning tucked between the pages, written in a stranger's hand. They've been looking for this since Victor died. Stop reading, put it back. You don't know what they're willing to do. And across the street, a black SUV, engine off, lights off, someone inside watching. Marcus had closed the blinds, and then he turned to file number 2. This is the Wealth Files. Episode 2, The Asset Illusion. Marcus didn't sleep that night, not because of the SUV, though it was gone by midnight when he finally checked again, nothing but an empty stretch of wet asphalt under a dead streetlight. Not because of the warning note either, though he'd read it 6 more times, studying the handwriting like it might reveal something new. He didn't sleep because of what he was reading. Victor Crane's journal had a gravity to it. Every page pulled him deeper. Every file felt like a door being opened in a room Marcus had lived in his whole life, a room he thought he understood completely, only to find there was a hallway behind the wall he'd never known existed. File 2 was titled, The Asset Illusion, and it started with a question that hit Marcus like a closed fist. Crane wrote, "Ask the average person what their greatest asset is. They will tell you one of 2 things, their house or their car, and in that single answer, you will understand precisely why they will never be wealthy." Marcus stopped. He read it again. He thought about his apartment, rented so that one didn't count. He thought about his Civic. He thought about his co-worker Danny, who'd bought a house 2 years ago and talked about it like it was the smartest thing a person could do. Building equity, Danny always said, best investment you'll ever make. Marcus had believed him. He'd been jealous of Danny, actually. Had told himself that as soon as he saved enough for a down payment, he'd do the same thing. A house, stability, an asset. He kept reading. Crane continued, "Here is the definition that will change how you see everything. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That is it. That is the entire distinction. It is not complicated. But the financial system has spent decades making sure you never hear it explained this simply, because if you understood it, you would stop buying the things that make them rich and start buying the things that make you rich." Marcus underlined that 3 times. Crane went on, "Your house, in most cases, is not an asset. It is the most expensive liability you will ever own. It demands a mortgage payment every month. It demands property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, the roof, the water heater, the furnace. Every single month, your house reaches into your pocket and takes. It does not give. The bank that holds your mortgage, that house is their asset, not yours. Not until the day it produces income, rental income for instance, does a house become an asset. Until that day, it is a beautifully disguised liability dressed up in the language of the American dream." Marcus put the journal down on the table. He stared at the ceiling. He thought about every conversation he'd ever had about money, every piece of advice, every article, every well-meaning relative who'd told him to buy a house, buy a car, contribute to his 401k, and stop worrying. None of them had ever explained this. None of them had ever drawn that line. Assets put money in. Liabilities take money out. It was so simple, so obvious in hindsight, and yet it reframed everything. He picked the journal back up. Crane wrote, "The wealthy obsessively acquire assets. The middle class obsessively acquire liabilities, and then call those liabilities assets because they have been told to. A new car feels like a reward, but the moment you drive it off the lot, it loses value. It demands insurance, fuel, maintenance. It takes from you every single month without ever giving back. That is not an asset. That is a beautifully marketed financial trap." Marcus thought about his Civic. Okay, His was a 2009 with a broken heater. Not exactly a status symbol, but he'd had co-workers finance brand new trucks, paying $600 a month, telling themselves it was fine because they needed it for work. $600 a month, every month, for 60 months. He did the math on his phone, $36,000, for a vehicle that would be worth maybe $12,000 by the time it was paid off. $24,000, essentially handed to a bank, for the privilege of driving something that smelled like new plastic. The trap wasn't hidden. It was in plain sight. It just had better marketing than the truth. So what are real assets? Let me be precise. Assets are things that generate income or appreciate in value while you hold them. Stocks, bonds, real estate that produces rental income, a business that generates revenue, intellectual property that pays royalties. These are assets. These are what the wealthy spend their lives acquiring. While the middle class finances liabilities, the wealthy finance assets. That single habit, compounded over 20 years, is the entire explanation for the wealth gap in this country. Marcus set the journal down again and grabbed his pen. He drew 2 columns on the notepad he'd been using since last night. On the left, liabilities. On the right, assets. He started filling in the left column first. It filled up fast. His phone plan, $85 a month. His credit card debt, $12,000, costing him roughly $200 a month in interest alone. His gym membership he hadn't used in 4 months. His streaming subscriptions. The furniture he'd put on a store credit card 2 years ago and was still technically paying off. He moved to the right column. He stared at it. Blank. Not a single thing. He had been alive for 32 years, working since he was 16, and he had accumulated exactly 0 assets. Everything he owned either cost him money every month or sat there doing absolutely nothing. He felt sick. If you are reading this and the right column is empty, do not despair. Despair is the luxury of people who aren't paying attention. You are now paying attention. That emptiness is not a verdict on your past. It is a map for your future. You now know exactly what to do. Every financial decision from this point forward must be filtered through one single question. Does this put money into my pocket or take money out? Ask it before every purchase. Ask it before every commitment. Ask it before you sign anything. The answer to that question, repeated thousands of times over the course of a life, is the difference between poverty and wealth. Marcus read that paragraph 4 times. He wrote it out, word for word, at the bottom of his notepad. He underlined the last sentence. He sat in the silence of his kitchen, the hum of his refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing outside, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly. Clarity. Like a fog he hadn't even known was there had lifted, just enough to see the first few steps of a path he'd been standing next to his whole life without realizing it. He turned to page 3 of file 2. Crane wrote, "There is one more thing you must understand about the asset illusion, and it is the most dangerous part. The people who love you will tell you that you are being foolish. They will point to their house and their car and their steady job and tell you that what you are reading is fantasy, that the real world doesn't work this way, that you should be grateful for stability. I am telling you now, do not confuse stability with wealth. A cage is stable, a cage is predictable, a cage does not require risk or courage or discomfort. But no one ever built a life of real freedom inside a cage, no matter how comfortable the bars." Marcus closed the journal, not because he was done, because he needed a moment.
You have my father's journal. Victor Crane was my father. And the people in that SUV, they're not following you because of what's in the journal. They're following you because of what's hidden inside the cover. May I come in?
And that, my friend, is where File 2 ends. What's hidden inside the cover of Victor Crane's journal? Who is this woman? And why have the people in that SUV been searching for it since the moment Crane died? Episode 3 of The Wealth Files drops next week, and I promise you, the next file Victor Crane left behind will be the one that changes the way you think about money forever. Subscribe, hit the bell, and whatever you do, do not miss the next episode.